Welcome to Big Blend Radio, where we celebrate variety and how it adds spice to quality of life. Welcome, everyone. Today is a special show. We are raising a toast to motherhood, sharing stories of love, life lessons, strength, and resilience. We wish moms across the country and around the world a very happy Mother's Day. But this show is timeless. We want to honor moms and mom figures across generations, cultures, and even the animal kingdom. We want to honor you every single day, year round. Our featured guest on the show, we start off with Christy Wood, who is a world champion horse trainer and author, and Erin Youngless, who is a genealogist and also an author. Then we go on to travel writer Terry Guthrie, who shares a very moving story about her mother-in-law, who helped kickstart her son Ron's career as a Top Gun fighter pilot. Heidi Sander is an award-winning poet and travel journalist, and she closes the show sharing 2 poems and some heartwarming stories about her mom. It's really interesting to hear these stories of motherhood. Christy Wood, her equestrian career as a world champion horse trainer, she always had her mom by her side, supporting her. Erin Youngless, she's a genealogist and author, but she really gets into those stories of how women came across to this country and how they survived and were so resilient, like her great-grandmother. So enjoy the show, and again, happy Mother's Day to all listening on Mother's Day, but really, it's happy Mother's Day every day. So when it's Mother's Day, of course, we have to have Nancy here, my mom, co-host of Big Blend Radio, co-publisher of Big Blend magazines. And we're going to talk a little bit about mothers in the world, the animal world, right? Is that what you want to talk about, Nancy?
Yeah.
But first, happy Mother's Day.
Well, thank you.
And happy birthday.
Well, thank you.
Because Nancy was born on Mother's Day. And since she's here and we're talking about mothers, a lot of times people ask why I call Nancy Nancy. It is not out of disrespect. But if I want something, she is mom. But no, I worked for Nancy when I was very young. And at that time, you couldn't just answer her workplace phone and go, "Hey, mom." So it came from professionalism, actually, and it just stuck. And okay. But it's not out of being rude to my mom.
No, not at all.
No, but we do need to give a shout out to Nana.
Yes.
Your grandma, and to your mom, Hope. And you know what? I want to say something about Hope, Grandma Hope. I used to send her letters when I was a little girl in South Africa. And I was really into writing, as you know. Look at where we are, funny. And I used to send her article after article after article. I would write about wildlife around the world, and I would write stories. And we actually have that collection, the Africa collection, and a collection of my stories in storage that I sent to her. And
your music.
Yeah, my music, but and poetry. But what I was sending her, there were things I was all interested in, what American wildlife. We were living in South Africa at the time and had lived in Kenya. And I wanted to go to the Okefenokee Swamp. This was my biggest deal. And we've been there, 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
So we need to do it again.
Yeah, it's time.
Because there were bobcats. I was enthralled about bobcats and gators.
Gators.
Of course. Here we go with the gators.
Wow.
And speaking of Mother's Day, see, you can hear that's a little puppy that we're being surrogate mothers to. That is little Ren saying happy Mother's Day. We're taking care of Ren and Starling, who will be here. And Ren is turning 6 months old on your birthday.
And he's an energetic
little puppy. Yes, he's very cute. So we're being surrogate mothers as we travel the country as pet sitters through Trusted House Sitters. It's not a money gig. This is a gig where we get to work and live within communities and actually know what America is like. Some people do this around the world, but we get to take care of animals, all kinds of pets. We've taken care of tortoises, donkeys, guinea pigs, chickens, guinea fowl, ducks, geese, dogs, cats,
Have I got a snakes? We've done a little bit of everything.
Birds,
there's a lot of birds,
birds.
lots of pigs,
Fish tanks,
and outdoor
carp in
fish.
the ponds.
Yes, we love it. So we have so that's another thing is happy Mother's Day to all mommies, mother figures, animal moms, people who are a mom to someone in their life. So Nancy, you're a big wildlife person. You're primarily a wildlife artist that started your journey going to Africa, going to Kenya, and working for Joy Adamson. For those, check out Born Free, Elsa the Lion, the movie and the books, and you'll learn more about Nancy's background. So I know you wanted to talk about animal moms.
Yeah, because, we had a recent experience with an alligator who had babies, and she was in her element, and we were walking a path.
We cannot see her, so we're not being stupid tourists.
No, but we heard this growl. I don't know what else to call it.
They call it a bellow.
A bellow.
But it's massively huge.
It was loud. And my first thing was, we were in Florida and I thought panther, but it didn't quite sound like a panther.
We were actually in Georgia, but we just crossed over.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Animal-wise. But so the bellow was loud. I mean, and we're like, what the? Mm-hmm. And we looked down and there's a mommy with her baby.
She was doing like push-ups. Like if you see an iguana doing a push-up, this gator mom was, doing it.
She's trying to tell you, I'm about to rush. I'm about to come out. And she would have had to swim a little bit and then climb up a bank.
But they can do that pretty darn fast.
Yeah, but they're faster than what you think. And so it was kind of respect for you. We backed off because we weren't physically doing anything on purpose to annoy her. We didn't, if she hadn't bellowed, we wouldn't have probably noticed her as much.
No, but there was a lot of gator moms and gators. Yeah. So it's mating season for gators in Florida, Georgia, Alabama, wherever all the gators are. And so from April through June, so we did some extra research because we've done a ton of filming of gators. By the way, May 29th is National Alligator Day.
Yay.
So I'm going to put some footage together for that. But so this is about mamas. Like they say, don't mess with a mama bear. And I just had a bear encounter with mama, dad, and two little babies trying to get in the car. But so that's another interesting thing is the moms have always been a protector, right? So even lionesses, I always remember the lioness actually being the hunter, right? For a family.
Yeah, and not to say that the males never hunt, but the mamas go out and they are feeding more than just themselves. Mm-hmm. Where usually the male lion is a lone lion and he'll hunt and feed for himself. Mm.
Well, the moms, don't they, if they bring one, like if they take an impala down, don't they, like the men, kind of interesting how we used to be as humans, right? Mm-hmm. The men get to eat and then the kids and then the mom at the end. Isn't that kind of funny?
Well, a male lion is always going to be stronger than a female, and they recognize that. So there is a hierarchy, yes.
Well, so moms are protectors, as we all know, mama bears, and you instill in the humans. But you also dug up some interesting information about how moms take care of other animals that are not their children. So it could be the same species, but some birds and animals you found actually will take in an animal that even is not their species, right?
I was pretty surprised with the research because especially when it came to birds, that if they find what in their mind is an abandoned nest, they will sit. And so will a male, depending on the bird species, will sit on eggs that aren't even theirs.
Just to keep them just out of natural...
Well, and most of the scientists who wrote the papers were saying they either never looked for it before as scientists, or now they're recognizing or seeing a protection of the entire species. instead of just their family. So
maybe like with climate change and everything.
So nature is way more
community driven.
Yeah, well, species recognize danger and they take the appropriate steps. And now there's an argument, is it instinct or do they think? You know, so, well, that could go on, but which does it matter? You know, it's the fact of the matter is we can't live out without plants, can't live without water, we can't live without air, and we can't live without food. And all food depends on water, food, shelter. So it is something that if we kill and keep killing off everything in nature, eventually we're looking at killing ourselves. We're doing a pretty good job of it so far.
So this is cool how moms are rallying together on species, birds, animals. Do you have any other examples of moms helping, any animal species?
One of the things I learned was that certain animal species that they've studied, doesn't mean all animal species do this or none of the others do it, that they will nurse another animal in their herd's child if something happens to the mother. So they will nurse.
Which species?
And mammals mostly, because that's
like what an elephant do?
Yeah, that is what they've studied so far. They haven't studied insects yet.
So mammals will actually nurse. We've seen it with monkeys, though.
Yeah, monkeys.
You and I have seen monkeys take care of each other.
Monkeys trade kids off all the time.
Vervet monkeys. We've seen it with vervet monkeys. We've seen them grieve. We've seen animals grieve. The moms hold.
Sloth.
Really?
Yeah.
Remember that vervet monkey that just held her dead baby, her baby, and just
sad.
held it and held it.
Oh, that was just so sad. It died, and in her arms,
and she just kept holding
it. And then
it.
she took it down. She put leaves over it, laid it on the ground, and stood up in a tree. When I say stand up, I mean she stood.
Yeah, on her haunches, hind legs.
Yeah. And watched if she could find a sign of life. That's the way I interpret it. Somebody else would interpret it a different way. But it was really sad. And other female monkeys grouped around her. Vervet monkeys grouped around her. So there was a community about it.
So it's a matriarchal, I think a lot of animal societies are matriarchal societies, like elephants are a huge one of that. So, and they protect their young, and sometimes they have to protect, I know a moose mom will take her baby. You've been charged by a moose by accident too, and you do not mess with a moose mom, but the moose moves, and sometimes with the bears too, the bear moms want to get away from the males because, they'll come to mate or whatever and actually harm their own young. So a lot of moms are that ferocious for that reason, but I love the fact that moms will take care of other moms' kids. Well, that's amazing.
It's interesting, and I hope they do more studies with reptiles and birds.
Because you say,
see, well, because it's. I think some chicken farmers will say that they can take eggs from one chicken mother and give them to another to lay on if something happens.
We've seen that actually, now that I think of it.
Yeah. So it can be done, but that's with our interference. Whether it happens naturally in the natural world is another thing.
Well, as humans, we adopt children all the time, which is a wonderful thing. And I look at us as pet sitting across the country when we take care of someone's animals. They're like our own. I don't know how many times a day I tell animals I love them.
Oh, I know.
Because it's like, oh, I love you. You're so sweet. Look at you. You're so cute. And so then I feel like all right, Lisa, you're a little nuts, but you really care. And we
it's
sleep
not
with a lot of animals. That sounds bad. Anyway.
Talk about your past.
Yeah, really, I had a wonderful, lively past. No, but we end up snuggling with dogs in beds, all over cats, dogs. We didn't do that with the pigs or the donkey.
Or the
snakes. But, some animals are used to their moms and dads or, being in bed. They all sleep on the same bed. And we've snuggled with animals across this country and around the world when we've had many animals ourselves since I don't think I've never had a year without an animal in my life.
But that is quite natural.
That's what I'm saying. We naturally care.
Animals.
Yeah.
People may not want to hear that, but it's true. We are herd animals and so are dogs. Now cats, they have a pride if you're a lion, but
they still have.
They're kind of loners, but they still
at the end of the day
company and warmth.
Well, I love, there's one dog we pet sat. He was a big, giant Great Dane puppy, and he was still being trained. And so, one of those as we pet sit, we train, right? So you just heard a little of that with little Ren, and now he's sleeping. So they're both asleep now. But he was a beautiful, big Great Dane. And the cat had just lost her, elder brother. And so when I went to walk him, I'm doing all the training steps, sit, stop, all of it. We follow protocol and to keep the training going, which is interesting too, to, slide into that, stay with the routine. So we're being, like I said, surrogate moms. And whenever I went for a walk with the dog, and we didn't go on the street because still a big Great Dane puppy, and we need to stay on the property, which was fairly big with pathways, and the cat would go walkies with us. And this was the coolest thing. And I've seen dogs and cats snuggle together. I mean, I think that is, and we've seen parrots get along with, do you remember the one parrot?
Feeding the dog?
Feeding the dog, would feed the dog. The one dog would know and go and get his treat from the parrot. And then the parrot would swear at the dog. But anyway, that's just, it's funny. It's funny.
He was mimicking the owner.
But it's so interesting how these interactions, now sometimes none of them get along or whatever, but when you see that happen with animals, and they do know emotion, they do know grief, they do know joy, dogs have incredible joy, and cats can get crazy and in their craziness when they're like attacking a toy, when they're going to disembowel a toy, a cat with their back legs, kind of like a bunny. Oh yeah, we've taken care of rabbits too.
Yeah.
They're in their zone. But I think it's because we've domesticated animals, so that little live side, that wild side comes out.
Live side is still there.
But I mean, just the care and the animals who have so many babies at once. I always feel like, when you see sometimes the kittens hanging on the boobies of their mommy, and I'm just like, the poor thing. I mean, that poor mom.
But you know what? There's one thing about the animal kingdom. Animals love their babies just as much as humans love theirs.
Perfectly
Make
said.
no mistake. They will die for their children.
Majority. There are some times when there are some times in humans and animals where it's a small
disconnect.
There's a disconnect, or it's just a survival. So like in the wild, it's a little different. An animal will, for the survival of the rest of their babies, leave one that's going to get all of them killed in the wild, right?
Well, they don't go, let me leave this one.
No, and it's not out of cruelty.
That's
it's not
usually the youngest, smallest one that can't move as fast.
And women have postpartum depression, and at times don't connect with their baby because of that depression. There's just an emotional thing, and they go down. There's so much help and research with that's helping moms everywhere understand that and not go through that. So it's a wild world, man. But here's to moms in all living species, human, animal, bird, reptiles, all of it. And, I just think even just how all the animals are carried around, marsupials, how they have their little pouches, swans with little birds, how lizards.
On the back of their moms.
I mean, the gators hang out on the backs of their moms and stuff. So it's so cool. Happy Mother's Day.
we've got two great writers and a writer on Big Blend Radio here to share their Mother's Day stories. I'm going to start with Christy Wood. Christy Wood is a world champion horse trainer. She also does these amazing trail rides throughout the Sequoia region, but also a progressive trail ride every year. And this is the Chief Joseph Trail Ride. And you've got to go check out her website, wdnhorse.com, to learn more about her latest book, because it tells you about her ride that she does. It's a 13-year progressive trail ride following in the footsteps of Chief Joseph and the Nez Perce. Am I getting this right?
You got it right, Lisa.
Yes, I know. And so your latest book, and you are a writer and an amazing one too, is Hoofprints Across Time, A Trail Ride to Remember. And that really focuses on her experience, her horse's experience. And also there's other riders going with them. And usually you have to have an Appaloosa when you do this, because that was the horse that Chief Joseph actually introduced to the world. I did not know that until we started the ABCs, that he was the chief of the Appaloosa as well, right?
He developed the Appaloosa breed, actually developed it with selective breeding and certain traits that he wanted to have in his superior horse.
Wow, amazing. So everyone, wdnhorse.com. As always, the links are in the episode notes. And our next guest is Erin Youngless, who's been on our show for years, just like Christy. Erin is an amazing writer, but she's also a genealogist. And you can go to genealogybyErin.com, and that's ARYN. So welcome back, Erin. How are you?
Hi, Lisa. I am doing fantastic. How are you?
Doing good. Have you dug up any good dirt lately?
Some. I've had some family bombs, if you will, that were surprising. So that's been fun.
I love this about genealogy. I know you're going to be in our Family Fest talking more genealogy. And the Family Fest is going to air the first Sunday of June. And, we put this out. It's actually National Family Month. And we put the call out to all of our experts, and literally every single person coming on the show has a tie, and it's all about genealogy.
Oh,
seriously. I thought we were talking parenting and family friendly destinations, and nope, everybody wants to talk about family history. So if you want some good gossip and juicy stories, tune in. But it's, when you do genealogy, you find, I know we've talked about this on a show with you before, Erin, we find things that we didn't want to know about, but most of the times, don't we find stories of strength and resilience?
Yeah, you find both. And you find there's just so many different stories about strength and resilience and surviving and making choices that are very hard in the hopes of bettering, your future and your family's future. And it's beautiful.
I love that you do this. What got you started in genealogy? Like, what was the beginning? Because I've always known you on the writing side of life, not horse writing with a T, and also being involved in film as well with that. But what was it that led you to genealogy?
With my path, my family growing up, I heard a lot about my mom's side of the family and a little bit about my dad's, but there was a whole family tree, whole branch, if you will, that we didn't know anything about. And when my son was little, he had a project at school and they wanted you to, learn about your family history. And my husband's side of the family is extensive, and it goes back to before America was America in the United States. But my family, there was this just void. So as I was answering his elementary school questions, I was like, well, and I started digging into my family, and then the pandemic happened, and I just shifted that interest into, I took a lot of classes and started helping other people answer their questions.
Wow. And you geek out, huh? Like
yes.
On that kind of, yeah. It would be a dangerous thing for me to really start, because I think we wouldn't have any magazines going out or podcasts airing on time. It would be dangerous. It would be very dangerous. And I've done some work on it, but man, yeah. But you learn. Do you think it gets people interested in history when they do it, when they may not have been interested in history when they were in school, that maybe they'll get interested in history once they start digging up their own history?
Absolutely. Because when you begin working on your family tree, two things happen. First off, you find out about history you didn't know existed,
Mhm.
and it just wasn't part of the curriculum. And the second is that you learn that your ancestor was part of that history on the ground, doing, being part of it and fighting in a war or striking for change. And it's a wonderful feeling. It gives you this connection to the history that it was your actual ancestor. You were part of it. You're here because of them.
It makes it real. It's not
Yes.
just a timeline in a textbook. Christy, have you done any genealogy on your side of your family at all?
Oh my gosh, this is just an amazing conversation because my mother was adopted
Oh,
and
Oh,
had a
wow.
wonderful, wonderful adoptive grandmother. So much love was there that she never seeked to try to find who her real parents were. And then I decided around 2014 that I'd like to know what my other side was. I knew from family meetings and things like that of what my father's side was, except not thoroughly, because once I got on to ancestry.com and got the information back from my DNA, I was just totally stoked. I found out that I'm 6% Native American.
oh,
and
nice.
that just thrills me
That
because I
ties
ride,
back to Chief Joe,
right,
right?
because I ride with the Nez Perce. But what's also interesting is even on my father's side, one of our relatives, great 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 grandmother, actually married an Indian chief. So from the Flatheads up there in Montana. And so it was just
Oh,
really
wow.
fascinating. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I even have a little bit of Italian in me, Erin, even though I'm blonde haired and blue eyed. Blue eyed, they say there's the northern Italian people have
Yes.
blonde hair and blue eyes.
Yes, they do.
Ooh.
But I'm primarily Scandinavian. But I've always told people, don't let my blonde hair and blue eyes fool you. I tell them my heart is red because I do have a heart for Native Americans.
I love
I
that.
think I'm with you on that. Yep. The blonde hair,
Same.
blue eyes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're Scandinavian, but I'm finding that we have traits, physical traits that have come down as our hands, it's happened to Nancy and it's happening to me now. As soon as I crossed that 50 line, it said, "You're getting it, girl. Here it is, your delivery from the Vikings." And I can't pronounce it, Duchenne disease or whatever. It's basically our tendons are shrinking in our hands. And so
Hmm.
our hands start to become claws. And then, the other side, Erin knows we've got witches on the other side of our family. So
Oh,
there we
geez.
go. Watch out. So, well, our witches were burned at the stake for talking to animals, supposedly.
Oh,
So go
dear.
figure. So
Oh.
yeah, but that's ancient times back in the 1400s. So who knows?
Hmm.
Women were being dunked and burned for all kinds of reasons back then.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, but yeah, there's like genetic things that happen through your family. My grandma had it. And it just, that's kind of, do people do that a lot? Aaron, look up their family history for medical reasons and then go, oh, wait, now I found out something else I need to know.
Not typically. I haven't had people come to me for that, but personally, I have.
Mm,
I've looked through it and I've found heart conditions. They just run through my family, so I recommend it. And I recommend taking
yeah.
the time to see because it helps you better understand how to eat
Oh,
and what
yeah.
not to eat.
That's preventative medicine right there.
It is.
Knowing
Yeah.
ahead of time, you bet. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's
Hmm.
awesome. So, all right. So ladies, I know you both have stories to share. So, Erin, you have a grandmother or is it a great grandmother that you wanted to talk about for Mother's Day today? And happy Mother's Day, everyone out there that are mothers. And if you're mothers to animals or you're a mother figure to someone, that includes you too.
Yes, actually, I was going to talk about my great grandma from Italy. Her name was Dominica Tamaro, and that was her name because in Italy, women don't take their husband's surnames. That's a English trait that was carried over in the United States. And she was born in the late 1800s, about 1888. And I have a lot of great stories about her because, like I said, growing up, I heard a lot of fantastic stories about my family. But one of my very favorite stories about her is that at the time period, right before the family came over in the early 1900s, in Italy, there was a lot of poverty. Food wasn't growing. It was because local landlords decided to rip down trees. And as we know from the Dust Bowl, that's a bad idea. And the same thing pretty much happened in Italy. So there was a lot of wonderful views, but not enough food.
Mm.
And my family, her older brothers, decided to go to Canada to make money to send back for the family. And her husband also was part of this. And over the years, the brothers sent for their wives, but my great grandfather did not.
Wow.
He just decided that he liked the New World and he wanted to stay there and she could stay in Italy. So she raised up a bunch of money and she took her two kids and got on a boat and made her way to first New York and then took another boat or a train up to Canada. And that it was just always how I've seen my grandmother, great grandmother, because she just was resilient. And here was this man who was like, no, I changed my mind. And she was like, no, I'm coming. And she did. And she would do that over and over again in her life. During the Depression, when money was short and scarce, she started making moonshine and was
Go
arrested.
girl.
Yeah, she was arrested for it.
Oh my gosh.
And the family legend is, and I found the court documents, but it doesn't have transcription of what was spoken. But the family story is the judge said, "What do you have to say for yourself?" And she said, with a bunch of kids at home, "Well, at least I'll get a good night's rest." And they sent her to prison for a night.
Gosh.
But she ended up saving up a bunch of money and she bought an apartment building and she supported her kids and she supported her family. And she's why I'm here today and why we have the work ethic that we have. And I just respect that.
Wow. So where was her apartment building? Where was she caught moonshining?
We're in Cleveland, on the west side near Clark and Denison area, if you are from Cleveland or aware with Cleveland. So just outside of downtown.
Wow.
Yes. And my other great grandmother actually she did similar things. She also bought an apartment building because they came from poverty and they're like, we're not doing this. So they scraped every dime they had together and saved up, and then they would buy these buildings. And I know my other side, she sold the building and bought a duplex, and that's where my mom grew up in.
So were they boarding houses at that point, or are they actually called apartment buildings?
They called them blocks.
Oh, blocks. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And there were borders. So if you look through the census records from like the 20s, you'll find them living with a lot of borders in the house, which was very common, especially with families from Italy or Ireland's another great example where somebody would come over and start saving up money and then slowly bring other people over. So if you can't find an ancestor, look for relatives because they may be boarding.
Erin, in genealogy, have you seen this trend of women owning, like a boarding house, a block, an apartment building, that kind of thing, and renting it out so that they could stay home with their family, still be, entrepreneurial and make money. And obviously, you know what I mean? That they could actually be there and it was a way to do things. Have you seen that?
I have seen that. I've also seen where women were married and their husband had a large house and the husband passed away. So they turned their house into a boarding house so they could stay in their house.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I've seen a lot of that. And that happens in a lot of the bed and breakfasts that we've been to. Mm-hmm. The bed and breakfast, at some point, the husband dies and the woman turns around and rents out the rooms. So at that point,
that's probably where that initiated. That probably initiated. That's where it all came from.
Yeah, and they could be home with the kids. And if their husband had left them instead of dying, that sounds terrible, passing away. If their husband had let them or, whatever, because that would happen. And then a woman's supposed to make, living and have these kids. And at that time, you weren't allowed to really be who you wanted to be. You've got to think about women were property back then, depending on the era we're talking about. But for them to be able to do something, if I think they had the strength to make sure that their boarders, behave themselves, right? At
Exactly.
that
Well, and
point.
this was a great way to remain independent and not have to rely on a marriage to somebody else
Mhm.
to in order to move forward or rely on your male children to take care of you. It
Mhm.
allowed them to be independent, which may not be something they had in their country or even here, but they managed to figure out how to keep going, to persevere.
Mm, I love this. I love this.
Well,
Ooh, we
I
got
can
it.
imagine them cooking all those meals anyway. If you have that large of a family, then just you provide meals for your patrons as well.
Hmm.
Mhm.
So you take all those wonderful home skill that she has and make money from it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And
Well, I
moonshine.
think,
So bonus.
well, and moonshine, yeah, that's what I was going to say. That eases everything. But when you think in history, how many women end up with a farm, and how many farm hands come, and
Mhm.
they have a place for them to stay, and the farmers help. The farm hands come, and people passing through. There's so many stories of passers, strangers, and we've been to a lot of historic farms and plantations, and the historic ones, especially the plantations, had what was called a stranger's room. And the room is for someone that's passing through that they don't know, but they're being hospitable, but it's not connected where they can get to the family. It's like on the other end of the house. You have your own entrance, and here's your food, but you're not going to get my family in the middle of the night, just in case the stranger
Oh,
is a
goodness.
dangerous stranger, which is fascinating to me, like what they were thinking of back then, and people would trade and do stuff. Someone comes in on horseback, and, you know, I don't know if you've come up on stranger rooms. I don't know if they ever kept a guest list of those things,
I have
Erin,
not, but
and
I'm going to look it up
Oh, yeah.
stranger rooms.
eventually.
Yeah. Yeah. The first one I think we saw was Kent Plantation in Alexandria, Louisiana. And that it was just fascinating.
I
So,
do know
Christy,
candles.
oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was just going to say real quick. I do know that candles were used to let people know if they had room or not. So if there was a candle in the window, it meant there was
Oh,
room. And if the
oh,
candle was
Yeah.
out, there wasn't.
very
But that's
good.
all.
Yeah. I've heard about that too. In Asheville, there was angels in a window if there was room in the graveyard.
Oh,
Oh,
Sorry, that
dear.
was well. No, the
spooky.
writer Thomas Wolfe
Oh, my
is
goodness.
buried there, and his dad was ran mortuaries and a funeral home. So he was known for his angels in the window for like, here I'm open and you can, And so in the one cemetery I went to, it's behind our friend's bed and breakfast, the Line in the Rose B&B in the Montfort Historic District, which has over 600 historic homes. And it's a small little area, but it's like every home is historic. And the graveyard, Thomas Wolfe is buried there. O. Henry is buried there. And anyway, there's angel statues all throughout that come from the angel statue from Thomas Wolfe's parents. And I'm probably still getting this story wrong. I'm just going to say in case someone yells at me later. But it's kind of interesting how what was in the window, like you're talking about with the candles, and, I think about that with the Underground Railroad, with quilts, letting people know that they could escape,
Mm.
that this was a safe place to come and hide, how quilts did that. I don't know if it's ever been proven 100% that that is true, though. If that's one of those history legends, that go around. I don't know. But anyway, Christy, what about your story that you wanted to share?
Well, I just wanted to share. I had a wonderful mother, and and she was my best friend. Just a wonderful life that she sacrificed for me, and that's the word that I'm speaking about is
Mm,
sacrifice. And we don't realize that when we're being raised. We just think it's a normal thing for our parents to be there and have food on the table and to support our goals and things that we want to do. And I've never had children myself, and I could just see the how much of a sacrifice it truly was for my mother to be a full-time mother to my brother and to myself, and to provide the home that she did. And of course, my background with horses got started because I wanted a horse so bad, and they just were not horse people, and they just wanted to sort of put me off a little bit. They just really weren't not sure about getting into that type of a life. That they challenged me and said, "All right, if you want a horse that bad, you need to raise enough money to buy your first horse and feed it for a year. And what's great, I mean, I'm grateful to that because it taught me to be, I didn't realize how competitive I was going to be, but it also taught me the value of money. And, it's sort of a lost art today for young people to really work for things today. And I'm grateful that she did that. But she got involved with my life. And at the earliest stages of competing at horse shows, it was just even the very first horse show, my mother was just amazing of how she rallied around and went to the local stable and wanted to get involved in this and actually put together a horse show with the lady who had given me one riding lesson to teach me how to show a horse the next weekend. And I'm just that picture of my mother showing up at this horse show, deciding that she was going to be the announcer and announce a horse show that she'd never been to before, and going over the rules and different things she had to say with this wonderful trainer. And my mother is sitting there in this beautiful orange dress. She almost looked like oh gosh, what's the lady from Gone with the Wind?
Oh, Scarlett.
Scarlett.
Miss Scarlett.
She looks like Scarlett O'Hara because she's got this big brimmed hat and a beautiful bow tied around her chin, and she's got her fluffy little dress that she's there, and she just knocked it out of the park in the way she's talked and how she controlled her voice and said the words and worked with the judge and worked with this trainer to know exactly how to announce this horse show that she'd never done in her life. And I'm just so grateful that my mother got involved like that. My father even got involved with leaning on a rake and raking around the barrels when they had the class for the barrel racing, and he'd go out and make sure the ground was level. And here's my dad, who was, a higher echelon executive with Hughes Aircraft Company and worked for Howard Hughes. It was just fascinating how the family got involved. But that picture of my mother and what support she gave me, I'm just very grateful to that, and I'm grateful for her sacrifice.
There's something about that, about still being strong and still wearing a dress, right? And being feminine.
Yeah.
No, you know what I mean? You can be feminine, you can be beautiful, and you can still be strong and, all of that good stuff. So, I think that's really huge.
Yeah, what was great too is that she watched my career develop, becoming international horse show judge. She watched me develop my own training techniques to be successful in training horses. My students were successful in showing, and it carries on almost to actually her last day that she was alive. She passed away on July 3rd of 2020, and that's when COVID was. She didn't die from COVID, but that's what was actually hitting all the industries. As you know, we were all supposed to be staying home. They were actually closing down horse shows because everybody didn't know how bad this was going to be. But of course, sitting on the back of a horse is the natural social distancing. We're 6 feet apart from each other when you're riding and showing. And one of the clubs actually found a private facility. All the fairgrounds closed the horse shows down. They didn't want the public there, but we found a public facility that allowed us to have a horse show. And there was a horse show on the weekend of July 4th. And I said, gee, Mom, we haven't been able to get to a show for a couple of months now because of all this. And I knew she was sort of fading, but she was still with us in mind. And she said, you know what? You need to go to that horse show. This is what you do. You need to be there. You go enjoy yourself. You do not have to sit here and hold my hand. And that's the weekend.
Wow.
And that's the weekend my mom passed away. I mean, she just loved what I was doing and knew how important it was to me, and actually loved it. She bragged. She was probably the president of my fan club. She was very wonderful about everybody and bragged about me and supported everything that I did. Even the Chief Joe ride, leaving every week and telling my family, I'll see you guys later. I'm leaving, and everybody understood. But she was just wonderful, and I know I'll see her again in heaven, and that's my hope.
Yeah, and you can talk to her still. Do you talk to her?
Oh gosh, yes. I share. I want to share so many things with her. I know she's not here, but hopefully in spirit she is.
I talk to my friends who have passed all the time. I go to bed, and Nancy and I talk about that all the time. She goes to bed, she says goodnight and says goodbye to her, good night to her Nana, which is my great grandmother, and she was like a real little badass. She really she rode a motorcycle, took kids in a Model T Ford from California
awesome.
to Canada. She was, and her husband was, go figure, he worked in newspapers as a typesetter, and he went deaf from the printing press.
Oh my
and it broke his heart. He just became a very, he just didn't become a human. He lost his soul, basically. He became
Oh.
a person who just sat, and she was not that way. She's one of those, if that happened to her, she would still find a way, but he was,
Yep. Mm-hmm.
sometimes this happens to people. Like they can't shift with the times. So she's like, well, I'll be that. And I remember Nancy always telling stories about Nana, about the time when you could wear pants as a woman. And
Ah.
she was like, oh, thank God we can wear pants now because I can put my groceries in the back of the car and not like have to worry about a skirt. And
Oh my
because she
gosh.
was, she rode motorcycles and Model Ts and whatever.
Oh,
She
that's
was
great.
born at the same year as the Queen Mother in
Oh my goodness.
1900,
Wow.
and it's just, she got married at 13. So now I'm going to take away Nancy's story, but I know she'll tell another one. But she got married at 13, and he was like maybe 16 or something, an arranged marriage in England, and they shipped him off over here, and off they go, But at that time, we were getting married at that age. I was still running around in the bush and doing like crazy things and climbing trees,
I can imagine.
but then they were getting married and expected to have kids, and they had big broods back then. So I think it's the strength of what women, I think Mother's Day is important, and it's important every day. It's not just, one day, but it reminds us these holidays are important to, number one, when you get together. I know Erin's going to say, get the stories, right?
Yes. Yes. Get the stories, write them down.
Yeah. Document them, film them, record them on your phone. Do it. We have, back in the day, like recording a story was like a big deal. We had those tape recorders that you could take around. Remember those one, like a little cassette that you could take a mobile, like
I still have one.
Oh my gosh, I love those. I used to, I have in our storage unit, I have all these tapes that my mom made when she got to Kenya. Single woman, goes halfway around the world and takes me as a year and a half or something, takes me to Kenya and starts working with Joy Adamson. And, everyone knows her from Born Free, Elsa the Lion, but off in the bush. And I was not allowed to be on camp and lived with 2 different tribes during that time frame because they were rehabilitating Penny the leopard. And, she's like, well, hell no, we're not going back to America. Now we're here, and I've got the letters in our storage unit from Joy Adamson telling her literally to take a left at the tree. No joke. It's there.
Gosh.
So when we go to Tucson, we're photographing all this stuff. So it's
great.
there and digitized, but I have tapes and I have to figure out how to do all that. I'm sure it's easily done now, but tapes of her recording what was going on day by day that she would send to my grandmother and family, of what was going on when we first set up. And her accent's a trip, man. It's just a trip, but she would do these recordings,
Lisa, the Native Americans, of course, didn't have recordings back in the 1800s. So everything was oral. The grandmothers passed on the family history to the mothers, and then they would pass it on. And they actually had a story string that the grandmother would create. And a story string was every time that they camped, she would pick up a little relic of either stone or a piece of a branch or something small that she could wrap in some sinew. And you remember what sinew is? That's the tendon of an animal, which became their thread for repairing their clothing. And they wrapped this little pebble, whatever the artifact was, they would wrap that in that sinew and continue to wrap it on every stop where they would go and travel. And so the story string actually, and I have that on my Native American outfit when I show in the heritage class at the Appaloosa shows. And my story string is about the size of a tennis ball. And if you unravel it, I can tell you a story about every little piece. And so that's how they remembered where they were and what happened at that particular place. So they would go back and be able to recount their family history.
Wow.
I love that.
By sinew. That's like a chapter. Each one is a chapter.
Yes.
Like when we look at that on podcasts, like here's a chapter, here's this segment, that segment, but it's easier now. We have transcriptions.
Yeah.
but that's amazing. Yet at the same time, like spiritually, I think when you're touching something from the past, you feel it.
Oh, do we ever? Yes.
There's a
Yeah. We experience that on the
connection.
trail. You betcha. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, any of those kinds of things, it's when you look at how important all our ancestral sites are, like Chaco Canyon and places, it's a ceremonial site. Um, and in northern New Mexico and just up the road is Aztec ruins, and Aztec ruins has the giant kiva, and Chaco is the ceremonial sites for the different the equinox and the solstice. And I don't know how they did these perfect circles. I just don't know how they did the rock work, and it's like a perfect circle. And I just think about all of when you go there, and women were involved, man. They were, and they ran
Mm-hmm.
things. Women
Mm-hmm.
have run the ships for years, man. I
Yeah.
don't care what village it is, what time frame, they ran stuff. And you can feel it. Do you feel that, as a genealogist, Erin, that even if it's not your family, and maybe you stumble on photos, even like on a computer, sometimes I get vibes just even looking at something. Do you
Mm.
get that way?
Just vibes off of
Like a
people were
picture
like or
or,
photos.
yeah,
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. I love
yeah,
old photographs because they were
mm-hmm.
so new and people didn't know what to do with them. So it's just interesting how people portrayed themselves in it. Recently, I found some for a man who wanted to be an actor. Well, he just said he was an actor. I haven't found anything about his acting career, but he did a whole photo shoot in the early 1900s, and that's just so cool. Is that, you have this moment or early Native American photography or that
Mm-hmm.
just
Wow.
having those moments in time. And yes, they do give you a vibe and this connection. I just love that
Mm-hmm.
connection feeling.
Me too. Me too. Well, ladies, thank you so much. Happy Mother's Day, Erin. And Christy, happy Horse and Doggy Mother's Day to
Thank you
you
very much.
and to your students, because
Yes,
she's a good mama. Listen, mamas come in all shapes,
They
sizes, and
do.
forms and styles of all kinds of beings in life. How about that? Like,
well,
you
happy
know,
Mother's Day to all of you as well. That's for sure.
yeah,
Absolutely.
everyone
Happy
again,
Mother's Day.
Christy, keep up with Christy at wdnhorse.com. And for Erin and her work as a genealogist, you need help, call Erin. Go to genealogyByErin.com. That's ARYN.com. All the links are in the episode notes. Thank you so much. Wow, I love these stories today. How cool. Thank you.
It was fun. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
So usually you hear Terry Guthrie on Big Blend Radio talking about travel. She has a podcast with us called Travel with Terry that airs every fourth Monday. But also she is an amazing travel writer. You can go to travelwithterry.net. Today, though, she is on our Mother's Day show to share a story about Ron, her husband's mother. And Terry's husband, Ron, is a retired fighter pilot and commercial pilot. And I'm going to link in the episode notes to an interview we did with him about his career as a fighter pilot. I don't ever want to mess with Ron. So I have a funny feeling I don't want to mess with his mother either. Right, Terry? Welcome back.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Lisa.
Well, happy Mother's Day, number one. You're a
Oh, thank
mama.
you. I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's always a crazy time around our house during May because I have both daughters' birthday and one falls on Mother's Day, which is also my brother-in-law's birthday. So Mother's Day is a busy, busy time around here, but always
It's
good.
a busy time here too because Nancy, my mom, was born on Mother's Day.
Oh, sure.
So I was even telling her when I'm making her, for brunch that she gets two this year because this year she doesn't
So
fall
her
on
birthday's
Mother's
on the
Day
11th. Yeah.
on the
Yeah.
12th. She's on the
Oh,
12th.
well, that's
But
my
she was,
daughter's birthday.
oh
Yeah.
my gosh, you got a Taurus in your life. Oh boy, they
Yes.
do keep us in line, don't they?
Yes. Well, I have two of them actually. Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. My
Woo.
other daughter's birthday is Cinco de Mayo. So yeah,
Oh,
we've
well,
got
happy
some.
birthday to her. That's
Thank
awesome.
you. Yeah. Yeah. It's a fun birthday.
Wow. Okay. Well, I love this. So May is a big party month. And then we get to
Mhm.
Memorial Weekend and we can all start barbecuing and having even more margaritas. This sounds good to me. But
That's
yeah,
right. That's right.
wow.
And
So you got to meet Ron's mom because you were both in Mississippi when you met, right?
yes, uh-huh. Yeah, I met her right off the bat, and I'll never forget when she pulled up and she got out of her car, what I said to Ron, I was like, "You didn't tell me your mother looked like Miss America." I mean, she did. She was a knockout. Yeah, and she just ran up to me and hugged me, and she was so, so sweet, and she and I just got along great, just right from the get-go, and loved her so much, and they just, I hope I don't cry. They had the sweetest story, though. That's what I wanted to share.
Oh, oh, but this is such a thing. People who touch your lives, right? And it's so interesting because I think it's always hard for the daughter-in-law and the mother-in-law to get along, but apparently this is not the
Yes.
case with you two.
No. Mm-mm. We
Mm,
had,
this is beautiful.
if I can do this, Lisa. Um, yeah, yeah. We had the best relationship, and she and my husband had the best relationship, and it was just a kind of a unique relationship, mother-son relationship, because my husband's dad was killed in a car wreck when he
Mm.
was little, and so that's very devastating. And she had four little kids, and my husband was the second one,
Oh,
and they just had a really hard time growing up. I remember her even telling me that one time she said, I literally had one can of green beans in my cabinets. And I said, why didn't you tell somebody or your family? Because she has a big family. And she said, I was just always so paranoid that they would take my kids away from me. But she worked so hard, and she was an amazing decorator. I remember Ron telling me, he's like, I never knew we were poor because she would fix her house up so cute and it would always be so neat and clean, and she could make something out of nothing. She's so creative. But anyway, they just they struggled his whole life. They struggled, and I'll no, we don't have much time, so I'll get down to
hmm
the end of it. But so basically, they moved around a lot. He never actually went to the same school twice in 2 consecutive years in his life until he was in high school. The last 2 years he was in well, excuse me, not the last 2 years, but the 10th and 11th grade, he was in Ocean Springs, Mississippi, and that's the only time he went to the same school for 2 years. From there, they
Wow.
moved to Houston, and she was getting some help from her uncle who lived in Houston, and he was going to help them. And anyway, they go to Houston. They live in a small apartment. He had, as I've told you before, he's very into motorcycles, always has been, and he told me he had to keep his motorcycle in his bedroom, which I cannot even imagine. Um, but he is a big guy, very athletic, never got to play any sports because he worked all the
Mm.
time. And I just really could not even understand that. I just didn't know of anybody like that. And I said, I mean, you couldn't do anything? You couldn't, because he said the football coaches were always after him and everything. And he was like, Terry, you don't understand. We would not have food on the table if I didn't work. And
Mm.
and he was working at a factory actually. And so, and his mother has told me so many times how she said, I would not have made it if it hadn't been for Ronnie. She said, I just would not have made it. But fast forward, he's graduating from high school, and I guess they were talking about what he was going to do. And she said, well, you're going to college. And he's like, no, I'm not. And no one in their family had gone to college. And he's like, Mother, we can't even hardly put, food on the table. Certainly don't have enough money to send me to college. And she said, I just buckled down on him because she said, I knew he was so gifted and so smart. And she said, I didn't know how it was going to do it, but I prayed about it. And we got in the biggest fight we'd ever been in. But she said he was going to go to college. And so after he graduated there from Sharpstown High in Houston, Texas, they moved back to Mississippi did not own a car. They're in a U-Haul truck. I mean, this is just like, you can't make this stuff up. The only college she knew about was in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, University of Southern Mississippi. She drops him off at the campus in the U-Haul truck and says, go. And he goes, like, what? What am I supposed to do? You know, and they're still fighting about it because he just thought it was so, you know, such an insane idea, and that she just was not being realistic. And she goes, I don't know, just go and walk around, just talk to people, just meet people. And so, and then he said he looks over and there goes the U-Haul truck. And he was thinking, where in the world is she going? You know? And so he was walking around campus, and what does he see but the Army ROTC? And that was the Army was a little bit familiar to him because his dad was in the Army. I forgot to mention that. And his dad was in the Army when he was killed in the car wreck. And so he goes there and he talks to the colonel that was there. And anyway, the guy says to him, so if you could do anything that you wanted to, anything, like, what is your biggest dream? What would you want to do in the military? And he said, you know, I've never had anybody ask me that, but I just knew right immediately, well, I would want to be a fighter pilot. I mean, who doesn't want to be a fighter pilot? And he said, oh, okay, well, that's good to know. Well, you need to go next door to Air Force ROTC, because that would be, you know, your way to become a fighter pilot. And he said, I couldn't even believe, you know, he was having that conversation. So that guy, that colonel at the Air Force ROTC explained everything to him and told him, you know, if he did well on this aptitude test, that they give 2 pilot slots out a year, and they would be a full scholarship. And yeah, and anyway, you know, they had a long conversation, and so he takes the testing and everything, and of course he does really well. And when they call him back in there, they're like, okay, you scored like exceptionally high. And not only would you get a full ride here at Southern Miss, but you actually qualified to go to the U.S. Air Force Academy. And
wow.
He's like, oh, really? Well, he didn't even really know too much about the Air Force Academy other than they didn't have girls at that time. So, so that's all he's thinking about. So anyway, Colonel McCracken, that's his name. Colonel McCracken, you know, he has on his Air Force Academy ring and everything. And so Ron says, like, well, do I have to go there? And he's like, well, no, you don't have to. But, you know, if you only knew how many people try so hard to get into the Air Force Academy, it's so hard to get into. And he's like, well, when I graduate from the Air Force Academy or I graduate from Southern Miss, I'm still the same. I'll be a second lieutenant. And he's like, well, yeah. And I'll still just go to flight school from there. And he said, yeah. He said, you just will not have, you know, the Air Force Academy as where you've graduated from. And he's like, oh, okay. He said, well, no offense, but I'm going to stay here at Southern Miss because I know the girls are 5-1 here. So, so he was just thinking about girls, which is good because then
that's normal. Yeah.
That's
a usual at that time, right?
Yeah. And so it just all just like his mother had hoped and prayed. It just all just and just opened up, and exactly what was supposed to happen to him did. And he got a full ride. He got they even provided him with private flight lessons, and then he goes, you know, he graduated in 3.5 years and nothing but straight A's. And I'll have to tell you, I know for a fact he didn't study much. He has a photographic memory. That's his secret weapon. But and then he goes to flight school and just aces it. I mean, he was driving. So it's kind of funny. He ended up getting to go to Columbus Air Force Base. That's not where he was originally supposed to go to. But we were so thrilled when he did because, you know, that's in Mississippi. But that's in northern Mississippi. I was in southern Mississippi. It was still 5 hours away. Every single weekend, he would come to Hattiesburg to see me. And
Aw.
and yeah, and then he, of course, everybody was wanting the fighter jets, and it just really depends on how well you do and how you're ranked in the class. And he was not number one, but he was number two. So he got his first choice in jet and first choice in the fighter base that he would go to, which he let me pick that. He said, I'm going to pick the jet. I'm going to pick the F-15 Eagle. And these are the bases that, that the F-15 Eagle is at. So he started naming them. I'll never forget that he started in Germany and then Japan and all these other places. And then he says Eglin Air Force Base and Fort Walton Beach, Destin, Florida. I was like, that's it. That's the one. And so anyway, long story short, he had a great Air Force career. We loved that time. We got married. I'll have to say he had just finished flight school. I just graduated, and we got married because we knew, he was taking off to the wild blue yonder. So I didn't want to lose him. So we got married a little bit earlier than we had thought we would. But then, he fast forward, he had a great career in the Air Force, F-15 pilot the whole time, captain, Top Gun, and then he gets out and then right away gets hired on with Delta. And then he had 35 great years with Delta Airlines as an international captain. So all that to say, that was all because of his mother's love, just the potential that his mother saw in him and pushed him towards, because he was not going that direction.
She dropped him off at the school.
I dropped him off in a U-Haul truck. I mean,
that's hysterical. But
isn't
that's
that hysterical?
Well, I know before we were recording, I was talking about a late great friend who was, a pilot and who had traveled, and his whole thing in his writing and everything he did was to teach people to get out your comfort zone. And for him to go to college was also a big deal. And he slept in his van to go to college to become a pilot.
Wow.
And,
yeah, there's some great stories out there.
There are, but it was like that. But, with Ron's mother, she pushed it out of your comfort zone. I mean, obviously he was always like that anyway. So she already knew he would land on his own 2 feet. She already believed in him.
Right.
She wouldn't have done that if she didn't believe in him, or she needed him to grow up kind of thing. But I think, it's obvious he already had, his 2 feet, but,
and very independent.
She pushed him.
Yeah. She did push him. And I just love that, she saw the potential. She didn't know how they were going to get there, but she was trying to push him in a direction for him to explore, every possible avenue. And I love that about her. And they just had the best relationship. They both say that whole time period after he graduated from high school and, before she dropped him off at Southern Miss, that they had their biggest fight ever, that it was just a huge fight. And he said he really just gave in to her because he wanted to stop fighting with her about it.
Oh, well, you can, because once a mother gets hold of you, there's to this day, I never win. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You just don't win against your mother. You can't.
Right.
It's just, I don't care.
Right. Or it'll just be hanging over you. You'll just be hearing her voice there. And anyway, all that to say, she just could not have been more proud of him.
That's awesome. And she got to see him and be alive for him to become a fighter pilot and everything.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Awesome.
Yes, indeed. And in fact, it was really special when he graduated from Columbus Air Force Base. Well, actually, when he graduated from Southern Miss and he had his Air Force commissioning ceremony there, she was on one side of him and I was on the other side, putting his officer pins on him. We've got a real sweet picture of that. And then when he graduated from Columbus Air Force Base, his grandfather, which was her father, he was a pilot, private pilot. And his runway was the pasture, the cow pasture. But anyway, he so this was getting a little bit on a little bit different level. But I think that's where Ron really kind of got some of his interest in aviation. But his grandfather was able to come to his graduation and pin his wings on him.
It's a super sweet story, but it's from a rocky start, right?
Oh, yes.
And I think what's so inspiring about the story is that what do we do in the tough times? Those are the stories that make us.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about what we do in the great times. We have a good time in the great times. It's what do we do when things are hard? And Carl Perkins is a great musician. That anyway, that's a whole other story because I could go on and on. But there was a quote that he said that if there weren't rocks in the stream, there would be no music.
Mm-hmm.
And isn't that true?
Oh,
and
that
so
is.
I may have not gotten that 100%, but that's the thing. It's you have to have those hard times at times to find out who you are. And when you rise above the hard times, you can't beat that feeling. There's nothing like it, is it? If we didn't have these challenges in life, and I think love develops through challenge as well. It makes you grow in ways. Yes, you can have fights like Ron and his mom, and boy, Nancy and I've had our doozies. We're mother-daughter. It's going to happen, but something beautiful comes out of it. Compromise.
Oh, that's right. That's right. I heard this yesterday, and I wanted to share this because it's so true. But it says, your mother is your first friend. Your mother is your best friend. Your mother is your friend forever. I love that.
Wow. Well, that's a perfect way, So that is the perfect way. Well, thank you so much, Terry, for sharing this. Everyone, again, Terry is on Big Blend Radio every fourth Monday. So check that out and go to travelwithterry.net. Thank you, Terry. Happy
Thank you,
Mom's
Lisa.
Day.
Thank you, ma'am. Bye-bye.
So we're going to continue our Mother's Day feature today with Heidi Sander. She was on our garden show last month. She made it we had a garden party because April is National Gardening Month, and we had two different shows going on because everybody wants to talk gardens, but she brought in on a second part was gardens, arts, and poetry. And she brought the poetry section in, which was great because April was Poetry Month. And now we're talking about Mother's Day. And as my mom, Nancy, will say, Mother's Day is every day. And she was born on Mother's Day. How about that? So this year, as you're listening to this, I'm cooking her food, getting her wine. I'm doing whatever she wants. And then the next day is actually her birthday. So I'm on double duty today and tomorrow and actually the whole month, which is wonderful. So, we talk about Mother's Day, but it's every day. But I think we need these holidays to sometimes really sit down and reflect. So I'm really glad to have Heidi Sander back on the show. She's one of our friends from the International Food, Wine, Travel Writers Association. Check them out at ifwtwa.org. We call them IFTWA. Last time she came on the show, we talked about travel and where she is based out of, which is up in Canada. She's got Shakespeare in her backyard, literally, right? Heidi, welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so you do have Shakespeare.
Shakespeare is launching. Theater season has started, so we are back with the Bard.
So this is Stratford. Get it straight about where you are, because I'm going to mess it up. Is it for everyone to know where you are?
Stratford, Ontario.
Okay,
Stratford's about an hour and a half outside of Toronto.
Ontario.
If that helps.
Toronto. Okay, yeah. See, we need to get there. We need to cross the border to Canada, because I want to go to Toronto. I don't know if you know Judy Cohen, the travel writer Judy Cohen.
No, I don't.
My gosh, you need to meet. You guys like music, so you guys need to meet on that. But she's the secretary on the board of IFTWA and an amazing world traveler. She'll be back on our show in September talking about some unique cruises that she takes. And she's in Toronto. And the first time I talked to her and we started talking about Toronto, and then I watched Anthony Bourdain go to Toronto, and I went,
I must go to Toronto because it's so multicultural that it seems like it's the best place to go eat food and meet people.
It
That's
is,
the
and
thing about multicultural is the food and the people,
it
obviously.
is. It is. Yeah, Toronto is amazing for that. Stratford is quite the culinary scene as well. So you do need to take the extra hour and a half and come out here and see us as well.
Oh, of course we would. Are you kidding me?
Lovely.
What's an hour and a half? That's nothing to us. Trust me. It's like, oh, someone's like 5 hours down the road. All right, we'll come out. We'll make it happen. But it doesn't always work out for us that way, but because of schedules. But we really don't care. It's like, all right, we're in Canada.
How many kilometers do you cover in a month, a year? Have you ever counted that?
All I know is somebody was talking about putting state stickers on the car the other day, and I said, I need to start putting stickers on the car because she's getting to that point of, she's at a quarter century kind of car, in mileage. I don't know because we travel a lot of distance, but then we stay in a place. So,
right.
You know what I mean? So it's kind of balanced, but it's great for our taxes. I didn't say that, did I, on air? But who knows what's happening with tax season this year anyway. But Heidi, everyone go to HeidiSander.com, by the way. And she's got a wonderful book called To Mom with Love. It's a poetry collection, and you'll have the link in the episode notes to go check it out and get it for mom. But I wanted to ask on Mother's Day, since Toronto is such an international hub, and then you're just outside, you've got the theater and gardens like we talked about last time. Mother's Day, what does Mother's Day look like in your area? I mean, from our last conversation about gardens and theater and poetry, I just feel like it just feels calm, beautiful, like you could just have a really wonderful, reflective, entertaining, but beautiful time with your mom or mother figure, in your area.
Oh, so much. And, it's just beautiful to sit by the water. It's what I used to do a lot with my mom, is to sit on a bench by the water. Those were one of her favorite spots. And there are a lot of special Mother's Day events, Mother's Day concerts. I'm actually booked into 2026 to do a poetic Mother's Day brunch and high tea. So there are all kinds of events like that. But because it's such an artistic town here, it goes beyond the usual, Mother's Day brunch. There's always an artistic element to it, which is really lovely here.
So art and food, flowers, water. You have
Music.
Swans. We know you have swans.
We have swans, yes. The swans don't quite parade on Mother's Day, but they're in the water. So, you can take a canoe into the water and they would come up to you for Mother's Day. That would be an interesting outing as well.
Wow.
They do come up to you when you canoe. I kayak regularly in the morning, and they'll often float up to you. So
you kayak? I love kayaking. I love it.
It's one of my favorite things. I mean, I'm Canadian, so you grow up canoeing. Canoeing is our way to connect through waterways. But I do love kayaking because you're closer to the ground, and I've had the most amazing experiences kayaking with humpback whales and orcas. It's a special way to connect.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Now, my mom, Nancy and I, we took our first kayaking lesson together in Louisiana in a bayou. And you know what's in those waters.
I was going to say, you don't want to tip.
Yeah. So we took this coach and he had the best kayak. It was like perfectly shaped around your body. Like it was like a single person, and he kept saying, don't go into the trees. That's where the snakes fall out. Well, the little frogs were jumping on us and all these things. And Nancy kept going into the trees. I cannot paddle straight. I go in circles. And it was funny because a high school friend and I, we were talking about this a few months ago. And I remember we had to paddle her something to do with a yacht club when we lived in South Africa at Port Elizabeth. We were at the yacht club and her dad needed us to go to a boat. I think he had a bottle of liquor, and us girls needed to paddle in this little rowboat thingy to the ship, well, not the ship, the little boat, and bring the liquor or whatever it was. And my friend Melissa got so mad at me because I kept making us go in circles. And she's like, Lisa, this is not, I'm like, no, I'm fine. No, I kept making us go in circles. And so anyway, going back to Louisiana, I did that. Then we had another opportunity to kayak, and I had just seen a water moccasin where I was. And I thought I was good enough to go on my own paddle in this huge body of water. And I couldn't. And I had a big towel over my head because I forgot my hat. This is Louisiana, it's sunshine. And everybody has these little cabins in the state park. And they're all seeing this. And Nancy, my mom's doing fine. And I'm going in circles. And now I'm freaking out about a snake. And she's thinking this is now funny because I'm now just twirling around and I've got this towel on my head. And and apparently I got vocal, and people started coming to the bank of the water to watch. And I'm twirling. The language is getting, yep. And finally I get out, and everybody started clapping. It was great. It was so nice. And my mom's sitting there going, ha ha, because I didn't listen to her, you know. So there was this can go into your adulthood, people, where you may want to still listen to your mother. And she was trying to tell me what to do, like my best friend, but somehow my body cannot do what they're telling me to do. So I go in circles. So if you ever need someone to paddle in a circle, I'm your person, but don't ever put me on a boat. I'm terrible. But that's it. But that's those things, right? With mom, daughters, and then all these people in their cabins invited us to their barbecues that night. All of them. People kept coming up to our cabin and inviting us to a barbecue because they wanted to know who these crazy women were.
That's the backstory.
Yeah. And we're like, no, no, we'll have our wine in our little screened-in porch, but, yeah, it was, but yeah, so I don't know about me and swans. I could get hurt. I could. You never know.
Well, especially if you were going in circles, they may get confused. Yes.
Yes, but I think it sounds peaceful. I just need. I don't know. Someone needs to drag me. I don't know, but that's beautiful.
Well, when you come here, we'll go kayaking.
Okay, cool. And there's no alligators and snakes really in your area.
No alligators.
Right?
You'll be safe, and I'll show you how to steer so that you don't go in circles anymore.
Yeah, and you're not my mom, so I'll probably listen and understand.
You'll listen. It's a lot of it is hip action.
Oh, well, I'll send you my video of learning how to play golf. It's a hip thing. I can dance, though. I can dance. That's the one thing I can do, but not.
Then you'll be good in a kayak.
All right. I kind of get what you're already saying. That's pretty cool. But you know how it is that you don't teach your kids how to drive, right? So
yes.
That's it. So you will get far with me, but somebody like my mom won't, just because she's my mom. That's crazy. Isn't that weird? Isn't that weird? But tell us about this poet.
We can put her in the...
Go ahead.
Sorry?
No, go
ahead. Poetry? This is actually a perfect segue into the poem I was going to read, actually. Because it's called Life Lessons.
Oh my gosh. And I didn't even know what you were going to read. This is great.
No. The book is just, it's entire collection of poems for mothers, written to my mom, but it's universal love. So it's personal, but every time someone reads it, they just say, this resonates with me, or that's my mom. So, and there's one in here also for moms in every kind of position we're all moms in some way, whether we're mothers to the earth, whether we're aunts, neighbors. So there's one for mothers beyond the familial kind of position.
I like that.
Or connection point. Mm-hmm.
So this book, yes, everyone, I just want to tell them again, the link is in the episode notes. I'm just being promotional. It's my job.
Oh, you're so sweet. Thank you.
Got to be promotional.
With Mother's Day coming up.
It's Mommy's Day. Yeah, go ahead. Read. What's the title?
Okay, so the title is Life Lessons. How appropriate for our conversation.
Yes.
Tad, right? So, you want me to read the poem now?
Yeah.
All right. What I learned from Mom is how to love everything. Bruised apples, chilly winter nights, melted hot chocolates, broken dreams, furs and hair, cleaning my room, slivers, loneliness, sewing a button, setbacks, scraped knees, candle wax on sleeves, and even to love those who caused pain, heartache, disappointment, and most importantly, love myself. Each time I do, Mom, I'm loving you right back. That's
Wow.
life.
Heidi, that, when you talk about like that's a poem of love, learning love for me.
True.
As I you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Everyone takes poems and music to their own thing, but I think to learn to love oneself is a challenge. Isn't that what we learn, right? In life? What's an ongoing
It's
process?
it's so true. So true. And life changes, we change, and sometimes you have to learn how to love yourself all over again, right?
Mm. And then
And Ma
learning to love those who cause pain. Ooh.
Mhm.
Ooh.
But in do yeah, but my mom was like that. I think
Mm.
that it's a big release when you can do that. And often we hold on to that, hold on to uh, frustration, disappointment, heartaches, and hold us back from finding love elsewhere, not only in ourselves but in others, in life in general. So I think it's really important to release that, and loving what's most painful, the hardest, but sometimes the best thing we can do.
That's a good lesson, when I think about it, because yeah, you can move forward when you do that, right? And
100%, yeah.
we all do things at different stages in our life. I always talk about this on the shows as about life lessons. We always have these life lessons that maybe I learned something, but someone hasn't caught up to me, and then they learned something and I haven't caught up to them. And so our lesson for us, ourselves, is when it's in due time. And somebody else is not going to learn
Mhm.
that lesson until it's their due time, and maybe they learned it years before you, even maybe as a kid. And
Mhm.
we could be, on our deathbed and finally get it, and it's just about when our time is. And if we're seeking that.
So true. And you have to be ready for it. You have to be seeking it. You have to be ready for it. But those life lessons sometimes come back to us in different forms, and we just have to learn it all over again in a deeper way.
Oh,
We
yes.
mhm. We never completely escape the lessons. It's one thing my mom said to me. She said she was in her 90s when she passed on, and she said, "You're
Oh.
just learning all the time still, Heidi. You never stop learning." And it's even more when you get older again. Like we have this great growth and learning spurt when we're younger, when we, enter into life, learn how to walk, talk, all of that. And toward the end of your life, as you're older, and there's so many changes that come at us so fast, and you're learning all over again in a different way. That was her
Mm.
perspective, anyway. We're yet to walk into that, Lisa. We're hopefully a long time away still from that, but
But no, but I think,
yeah.
but this whole thing about always learning is that's the thing. And to give people grace and room to learn,
Mhm.
to fall down, to pick up. And I think that is the epitome of what a mother is, that loves, that unconditional love a mother can give. I've interviewed a mom whose daughter went to prison for murder.
Mm.
And I thought, wow. And she had to do a lot of spiritual adjustment. And by the way, she got through it by kayaking and talking to God while she was kayaking. So just
Wow.
talk about this kind of full circle conversation here. I didn't know
Yes.
we were going to talk about this today, but she kayaked or
Oh.
canoed a lot. And
Oh.
because I think you're doing something, you're moving, and moving always
Mhm.
feels like when you put yourself into moving action, you start to move forward emotionally as well. It's like depression can really set in if you just keep staying in the bed instead of really forcing yourself out of the bed, right? So she had to
It's
keep
also a
moving.
point of
Go ahead.
mhm. It's also a point of connection, and you're connecting with nature, and it's more accepting and forgiving. The water is holding you, carrying you. There's a lot to
Ooh, embryonic.
being out in nature and kayaking. Mhm. It really is.
Yeah, the water's embryonic, and you got Mother Nature. Let's just talk about the
Mother.
she's the mother, and Mother Nature, and you can be kayaking, she could be raining, but you're looking up at the big sky at times. Sometimes you go down a tree tunnel or, depending on where you're going, but you're in Mother Nature and there's an embrace, even if sometimes she's harsh with weather. There is still an embrace at, sunshine.
There is an embrace and there's an acceptance, and it's a different kind of conversation. It's a conversation with yourself, really, but Mother Nature is supporting that. It's so true.
Mm. Wow.
And
Wow.
yes, the life lessons we get every day, right? And often we get small ones that we don't even realize. And that's kind of what I was saying in the poem too, whether it's bruised apples, chilly winter nights, we get that all the time. But there are little lessons in that, and learning to love whatever comes your way. It's tough.
Now, are you going to read
Yeah.
us the other one for mom figures that are not necessarily biological mommies?
Oh.
I know we were supposed to
Now I
only do
need to.
one, but we're being bad girls because we can if you want to. If you don't want to, that's fine. People can go get the book.
No, that's fine. I just need to find it in the book.
Because you mentioned it, so now I'm like, I want to hear it. I'm not a mom.
Yeah.
I didn't give birth, but I mommy a lot of animals, and I feel like sometimes we choose our careers sometimes that are about helping youth. I think there's a lot of people, a lot of women who do things like social workers, hospice caregivers, who are mothers,
Oh, yes.
nuns.
Mm-hmm.
I bring up nuns because nuns were part of my upbringing in Kenya. I'm not Catholic, but they were like family and took good care of us in Kenya at one point. And my mom used to teach them and art, as a wildlife artist. And it's just, I think there's mothering, it's caregiving, really what it is. And nourishment, that kind of thing that a mother does.
It's so true. And, even when you talk about taking care of animals, for example, that's actually another poem I have in the book called Sisters of the Earth, because we are. All of us who care about the environment, animals, nature, we're sisters of the earth. We're mothers of the earth.
I love it.
I found the poem.
Oh, yay.
Thanks for talking while I was looking for it. Okay, there we go. Called We Are All Mothers. We are all mothers, pulled from dreams of ourselves into the life of another, threading the well-worn edges of our past into a new face, stars that shine brave and bright, side by side, sharing what we know. This passage of motherhood calls us home. Short but sweet.
I love that. I love that. I love your poetry. Thank you for coming back on the show with your poetry and telling us more about Stratford and Toronto. And, I love this. I love this. Everyone go to HeidiSander.com. That's her website. She's also on Instagram under Heidi Sander Writer and Facebook under Heidi Sander Poet. And you go to her website and also check the link out in the episode notes to get her book. Again, Mother's Day, you may be listening to this a day after or like a year later, who knows? But Mother's Day is every day. That's what Nancy tells me. So I'll stick with that.
True.
It is. Thank you so much, Heidi.
Thanks, Lisa. It was really special. Thanks so much.
Thank you for listening to Big Blend Radio. Keep up with our shows at bigblendradio.com.